Larry, one of the things that is so nice to have you is a great honor to help you to help the whole Southeast Asia, so many people to learn about diabetes. The reason why I say that is because, first of all, we have people from right now from Hawaii, people from Los Angeles, people from Vancouver, people from California, also people from Singapore, Philippines, let's see, Australia. Wow, a lot of people, people hearing your lecture. So it'll be really good. And on top of that, I think, you know, it's so unique because you are actually in Colorado. It's like 5,000 miles away and able to, you know, to have this wonderful lecture. This is truly amazing. And I'm in Hong Kong, you're in Colorado, United States, so far away, 5,000 miles. We can come join this so-called, I would call it a summit, a good summit. And we have people from all over Southeast Asia, from Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Hong Kong, Australia, United States, in Hawaii. So this is really a fantastic. On top of that is truly a technology, you know, wonderful. We're allowed to do that. And certainly I think this is really stimulating. Also, one more thing is because of COVID, we don't have a chance to do that. If not, we'll go to a meeting and we're not going to have this experience. So I appreciate your help. You know, I was just wondering to find out a little bit more about the situation in United States of the typical pre-diabetic and diabetic situation in the United States. Can you tell me something about sort of, because we still have 10 more minutes to kind of, before we show your slides. So it'd be kind of nice to understand what is the situation in the United States now in the pre-diabetic situation and also diabetes.
Well, the number is growing, as you know. It used to be about 4%, but now seems like it's more than 6% of population may have pre-diabetic or diabetics.
Wow, okay.
And how to differentiate this two is also not that easy because it's a silent disease.
Right.
And a lot of patient or individual didn't realize they have the problem. And then checking blood sugar and the criteria is not uniform. The commonest, of course, is using the A1C. But again, A1C is only measuring the mean blood sugar over a period of time. And then there are people checking fasting blood sugar. But blood sugar fasting is only a small window of the whole picture. What's important is like how high the blood sugar goes up after you eat and what kind of food you eat. And that's also a very important factor as well. So it's a silent problem, it's a silent disease, and a lot of people didn't realize it. But when they have that thing, they need to be more positive. Not only they have to see the doctor, but they have to take care of themselves. So self-care, lifestyle changes, they are all very important. And I think that people are more aware of the problem. The other problem is the what kind of food they take. And the new epidemic, a lot of people claim that the fast food business, the soft drink especially, as being the main thing. In soft drink, because of the sugar they added in, and the kind of sugar is not just regular sugar, it's the fructose. And that can also create more problem to the patient. And there's a lot of public policy initiative. They are trying to think the soft drink and the addiction to soft drink as a form of public health issue. And they will talk about whether they need to initiate more tax for soft drink, just like people initiate tax for smoking. And that's an indirect way of discourage people or generate more public awareness about this particular problem. So these are many of the things that are on the horizon.
Wow, that's really good. Hey, by the way, just want to double check. Just now, Larry is talking. Can the people from Hawaii, can you give me a 4? You can hear Larry. And also, same time, you get a 5, you can hear Larry on the Facebook. Maybe Eugene can help me out so you can give me a 4, you hear Larry, what they talked about just now. And then, okay, and then we can able to start that. Is that okay? Okay, Eugene, can you give me a 4? Okay, good, excellent. You guys can hear Larry very well. Excellent, excellent. Hey, you know, actually in Hong Kong, just to give you some update of what's happening. In Hong Kong, we have 780,000 in actual diabetes. This is actually reported in the World Health Organization. And then the thing is, pre-diabetic is estimated to 2.3 million. And that's almost total 30% of the population. The sad part is majority of people in Hong Kong who found out themselves is pre-diabetic or even diabetic, they actually all found it by accident. You know, in other words, majority would say, oh, I want to go apply my insurance, life insurance, and they don't pass, and they don't want to give me the life insurance, or they give a big premium because of the fact that I'm pre-diabetic or diabetic. And many people, especially retired or before retired, they will probably pick up the medical insurance because now they have to go out to buy their own insurances. They usually go take a so-called healthcare check. That's the time that they got themselves to realize they are pre-diabetic or diabetic. And a lot of people don't know. And they, you know, and when they know, they really totally in surprise and shock. They say, hey, how can it be? I've always been very healthy. And so this is really the dilemma for many people, including myself, to be honest, Professor Chan. When you know, Professor, I actually visiting the Hong Kong typical clinic, and a professor over there is telling me, Andrew, you know, you are registered, you're ICU nurse, you know, yeah? I said, yeah, I know. And I said, hey, you're not approaching diabetes now. Your A1C is approaching 6.4. And then percent. And I picked my finger. I said, my A1C was 6.4, but I'm okay because I see myself in morning fasting blood sugar is always, you know, 5, 6 around that range. Never go up very high. As time goes on, I never did really change until, you know, every 6 months, my doctor come back and say, Andrew, you know, you're really approaching diabetic because you know what, your A1C is now 6.9%. If you don't do anything, if you're over 7, I'm gonna give you medication. Now, you would do one more time of that 6.9, you are a diabetic. Wow, at that time I got nervous. And then lucky, Abbott, you know, I used to work for Abbott, as you know, I'm regional director Abbott. And one of my Abbott friends, hey, I got this new thing called Abbott Libby, and you go able to look at it, you know, this little gadget here to help you to measure your blood sugar. So I start doing blood sugar, and then suddenly I said, whoa, after lunch, my blood sugar was up to 12, 13, which is like something like 240. Wow, and then I get scared. And then at that time, then I start develop my Lowsutea and do diet change, exercise and all that. But really at the end of the day, even myself, somehow there's no motivation for me to change. It's very strange. I mean, I'm a medical person also, but it doesn't kick in. It doesn't, like the message getting here doesn't come into the brain to say, yeah, you have to act. I don't know. Do you have any, I mean, United States, do they have the similar situation? Or these people, do they know, but they really not acting?
Well, I think you are just telling the same kind of story to many of the people that I know, and also many of the patients, because they didn't realize they have the problem. And they only realize it when they just accidentally find it out. And if you just check fasting sugar, you may not be able to pick up the problem as well.
Yeah, I perfectly agree, and I appreciate that you also recognize. I mean, I'm being a very experienced ICU nurse, an ER nurse, but it doesn't sink in. I don't know why. Although, you know, the numbers there, until one day, actually you saw, because I think what fooled me, to be honest, I think I want to let everybody know, because I only picked what? The morning fasting blood sugar. I never really picked the real sugar in a sense that after 2 hours I ate until I got the Abbott Libby. Because without the Abbott Libby, I would still think that I should be okay because my blood sugar, come on, man, I'm only 5 point something, 6, no more than 6.5. And on the other hand, this is really, I think that's where my downside, if you will, you know, I think that's what happened. So anyway, good. It's now 11 o'clock. Larry, first of all, I want to introduce Larry. I'm going to switch both Chinese and English now. We are so honored to have Larry to be our speaker today, because Larry actually is the professor of medicine, kidney transplant director of University of Colorado, had numerous experience from many years ago in Hong Kong. You start write a lot of but paper of diabetes, metabolic syndrome. And she is so experienced in the area. So we are so honored to help him, having him to give us this webinar today to alert us the problem if you have high blood sugar, what is going to lead to. 所以各位堂友，好多謝咧Professor Chan 咧喺University of Colorado 啦，咁遠嘅地方都俾一個咁好咁特別嘅webinar俾我哋，關於如果血糖好高對你身體有咩傷害咧？嗱，因為我諗你大家好聽過晒好多即係不同嘅教授講啦。咁我其實咧睇翻晒咁多個即係教授講嘅書咧，Professor Laurence Chan 可能真係最好嗰個啊，俾晒即係成個古仔俾你聽，由啲糖喺邊度嚟，同埋有啲糖點令到個身體壞，同埋仲有你點去防禦，成個故事咧已經喺晒度。所以呢個咧，我覺得係一個十分難得嘅機會。咁好多謝Professor Chan 咧，陳教授咧幫手去講呢樣嘢。嗱，佢講咧，佢會講英文先，講些中文咧係冇翻嘅。咁陣間咧講完書之後咧，我哋亦都會有一個好好嘅即係 question and answer 啦，Q&A 啦。咁你嗰陣時咧，你可以寫啲 question 落嚟咧，咁我就一一同你解答，好冇 ？Okay, Larry, thank you very much. I just introduced you in Chinese. Maybe you can help me to share your slides from your side, and then you can go from there.
Okay, I'll click my share screen, okay?
Right, okay, thank you.
And then I have to pick my slide then.
Right, you can put your slide, bring your slide in the share screen.
Okay, so I need to upload the slide then.
Right. And then I can see your share screen.
Okay. Why don't you put up the slide for me then?
Okay, I will do that. Okay, no problem.
Well, Andrew is preparing the slide. I just want to say I'm really very happy to get this opportunity to work together with Andrew and to give you my personal perspective about the problem related to high blood sugar and how they relate to prediabetes and diabetes and what are their consequences and how we can prevent the complications and the side effect of high blood sugar. So I can't see the slide yet. So
can you see the slide now? Can everybody see the slide?
Okay, so the slide's there now.
Yeah, okay. So why don't you just tell me next slide, I'll continue like that. How's that?
Okay, or I can click on through here if I can.
I don't think so because I need to share for you because of the fact.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
So what I was asked to give this particular presentation about the harmful effect of high blood sugar, its consequences and how we can prevent it. And I just want to give you a little experience of my personal perspective. I've been in Colorado for almost 40 years, but I was started in Hong Kong. And next slide, you'll show me my objective of this particular talk. I'm to trace the history of sugar and its relationship to the growth of diabetes as a global health problem. And really, we are now enter what we call a silent new pandemic. And this is diabetes or high blood sugar. And I'm going to examine the relationships of high blood sugar related to high blood pressure and lipids. So in Chinese, we call it some go sugar, high blood pressure, and high lipids. And all this lead to a lot of complication related to problem with mortality as well as problem with end organ problem. And we want to talk a little bit about the importance of good blood sugar control in preventing and delay the onset of diabetes. So thank you, Andrew, for giving the Chinese translations. And this basically capture what I'm going to say. But before I talk about the history of sugar, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. Andrew, can you click on the next slide? So I grew up in Hong Kong and graduated from Hong Kong University. As you can see, that's Queen Mary Hospital. And was grateful to my wonderful teacher. On the right-hand side, you have the late Professor David Todd and Professor Rosie Young. She is still very active in Hong Kong and she's still in the Hong Kong University Council. She was the former dean and her major interest was in diabetes. And one of my first paper ever published was in diabetes with her when I was in Hong Kong. And because of diabetes related to a lot of complications, and I was interested in kidney disease. And this is Dr. Richard Yee, is considered as the godfather of nephrology in Hong Kong. And he was the former president of the Hong Kong College of Medicine. And I was honored to receive an honorary fellowship from him. And the other two doctors, they are very involved in treatment of diabetes. Dr. C.H. Leung, a lot of people in Hong Kong knows him. He is chairman of the University Council and was on the legislature for the Hong Kong government. And he did one of the first kidney transplant in Hong Kong. And it was during that time I have the honor and privilege to participate in one of the early transplant when he was very active at Hong Kong University. And this is the late Professor Li Lixi. He was considered as the pioneer of kidney disease and diabetes in China. And when Andrew was vice president of Baxter's renal care for Asia, we have visited him and we have a lot of projects together to initiate the kidney dialysis program in many parts of China. Next slide, please, Andrew. So this is where I start. You can see here that this is one of the first paper I published with Professor Young. And at that time, there were really not that many diabetic patients in Hong Kong. And as you know, most of the Chinese in Hong Kong, when they have diabetes, most of them are type 2 diabetes at that time. And I can count it was less than 1,000 for over the year. And this is one of the, probably the second publication in English literature talk about diabetes among Chinese. And I also have some of the projects that relate to that. Because of the common complication of diabetes with kidney disease, so I was involved in interest in kidney disease. And here I just show you that this number of kidney transplant in those days. And I was in Hong Kong after graduation 72 to 76. And you can see some of the early transplants when I was involved with Dr. C.H. Leung. Of course, the number is increased, but the number is still not quite adequate for the population we have in Hong Kong. Next slide, please, Andrew. So I left Hong Kong in 76. So I've been away for almost 50 years already, approaching. And I landed in Oxford for my further training. So in addition to my specialist training in kidney disease, I also involved with biochemistry and metabolism. And I was fortunate to, under many famous mentors, including Sir Hans Krebs, a Nobel Prize winner for biochemistry back in '53, and another of Dr. Krebs' student, Dr. Ross. And I was accepted to a college under the president of that time, Sir Richard Doe. And he was the first recipient of the Hong Kong Shaw Prize back in 2004 for his contribution in medicine and about the relationship between cigarette smoking and cancer. So these are my background when I was in Oxford for almost 8 years. Then I left Oxford and landed in Colorado. Can I have the next slide? And before I move to that, I was interested in biochemistry and metabolic study. And this is what Dr. Krebs contributed. And this cycle is called Krebs cycle. So whatever we eat, metabolism, we change it to sugar. And sugar will go into the cell and then mitochondria to generate energy. So it's burning off the energy so that we can move around. So if we do exercise, we burn the glucose, we develop energy, and we also build up some other metabolite building up in the body. So I was very involved in that, and my PhD was related to the biochemistry and metabolic study. My next slide. And one of the areas that I was interested was related to how we can measure metabolism chemistry using the non-invasive machine. And we were the pioneer team in working on the current machine called magnetic resonance or MRI. I'm sure most of you have used that. But in the late 70s, we are trying to develop the machine so that it can be used in human. It was originally used for biochemistry. And this was me. When the machine was not big enough for the whole body, I only have my arm looking at chemistry. And these are the peaks of the energy. So these are ATP. So when we have glucose metabolized going through the different metabolic pathway, we generate energy and provide energy for work, provide energy for synthesis of protein, provide energy for building block. So I was very involved in that. And part of this was related to, you can say, in some way related to metabolism and also diabetes as well. Next slide, please. So after Oxford, I was invited to join the faculty of University of Colorado back in '83. So I've been there in the past 38 years. And this is our new campus, almost 2 miles in diameter, newly built in the last 20 years. But before that, we were further down in the downtown, and that's the Rocky Mountain. So this is my story. So I'm interested in kidney disease and kidney disease with kidney failure. How can we take care of the patient? How can we prevent more patients from coming into dialysis or transplant? And that's related to diabetes, related to blood sugar. And that's why I want to present this to you, that why I'm interested in this particular area. So after my story, I want to talk about the story of sugar. So sugar obviously is metabolized from all our food, and it will eventually convert it to glucose or sugar, and then it will go into metabolism and generate energy. But there's another source of sugar, and this is from this particular plant called sugar cane. And I'm sure there are so many origins of sugar cane, but the most well-documented one was from New Guinea of 8,000 years ago. And it's from here that spread to all the Southeast Asia islander, and then maybe around Pacific Ocean to different area. And of course, Hawaii is part of that, but it's difficult to know whether the sugar cane from Hawaii is flowing out from the Southeast Asia islander or whether it's from the continents. But the story is that, I just want to tell you the story to generate your interest, is that next slide, you can see that the route as documented in some of the history book. And this is based on a book that's written by my friend in Colorado, Richard Johnson, about the fat switch. And of course, there are a lot of other people are interested in that. It's from New Guinea. It moved to Southeast Asia. And of course, there are some on the southern part of China with the similar strain of sugar cane, and then going through India or the Silk Road, and then eventually to Europe. But the real expansion of the sugar story was further because of the plantation in the Central America. Can we have this next slide? So there are documentation, and whether this is real history or this is a fable, that on the second voyage, that is back in the 15th century, that Columbus stopped in Canary Island, which is the island outside Spain on the coast of West Africa. And he fell in love with this noble lady, Beatrice de Barbadilla. And on leaving, she gave sugarcane cutting to Columbus to bring to America. And that's where sugarcane was started in Central America, and then spread to America. And then from there, because of plantation, because of migration of African Americans, and then you have plantations. So that's the story. And you can see the next slide because of the,
或者我講講咧，俾啲香港人聽聽好嘛？或者我解得好 OK。第一咧，你知唔知糖咧係8000年前已經喺即係呢個 New Guinea 嗰度出現，然後就發去全世界。咁發全世界裏邊咧，就好多人咧，其實都唔知道一路落去歐洲。咁但係點去咧？其實仲有咧，可能係喺1493年嘅時候咧，點解仲由呢個歐洲帶到去美國咧？咁就係哥倫比亞第2次航行嗰陣時咧，佢個情人咧叫布巴比Della。咁就送咗啲糖俾佢，咁由嗰度開始咧，就啲糖咧，咁就一路落去到美洲啦。咁嗰陣時咧，美洲亦都會即係喺嗰度發達啦，南美亦都有啦。咁其實就係做到咁嘅。咁我只係深埋咗香港嘅朋友啦。咁佢如果聽唔到英文咧，咁我解釋啊，其實好特別啊，即係原來糖8000年已經由嗰度出嚟，可能去到中國，去到印度一路咁過嚟，去到歐洲，然後由歐洲。去美國就係哥倫比亞帶過去嘅，多謝啊，唔該 ，thanks，
Okay, so there are additional evidence for this. If you can see in the next slide, that after this event, And when there's huge land mass for the plantation of sugar cane in Central America and North America, and England at that time being the colonizer of North America for majority of the area, they managed to mass produce sugar. And so they brought sugar back to England. So it became a luxurious product. So when they have sugar, they will use it, and they got kind of addicted to it. And of course, eventually it spread to the European continent and other areas as well. And why don't we go through a few slides and then
OK，我再
Andrew
講一次呢個特別啲嘅，因為呢個好多人都未必知道。原來咧，即係喺英國咧，就將啲糖做咗之後咧，咁就開始買咗好多全個地方啦。咁但係英國人咧，亦都覺得哇好正喎，食糖，全部食完糖之後咧，全部變咗肥人。咁但係西班牙法國咧都睇到嗰陣時未必咁發達嘅時候咧，就冇乜肥人嘅。但英國咧嗰陣時已經立晒啲糖，我去邊度買都有，咁就好多全世界肥人就喺晒嗰度睇到英國，你睇呢個幾多肥人，所以好犀利啊嗰陣時。
Good. So with increased sugar intake, as you can see here, not only in England or UK, but also in United States later part. So you can see that with increase in the sugar consumption, the patient with diabetes, number of people die from diabetes, which is lower down here, to diabetes prevalence. So it's how many patients have diabetes per 100,000 of population, which they documented is right here. So this is correlated. So 有連帶嘅關係。So Andrew, why don't you want to
OK 嗱，其實你睇呢個 graph 都好特別啊！嗱，你睇下7幾年咧，咁啲糖一路係咁食咧，就好多人一路即係好個床就好增加好多啦。咁但係亦都睇到一樣嘢咧，其實就喺好多人亦都死咧，喺每10萬人嚟死咧，亦都增加好多嘅。咁亦都睇到咧喺兩個重要點裏面，第一次世界大戰、第二次世界大戰咧，因為唔夠食啊，你睇糖係跌得好緊要嘅。咁所以變咗嚟講咧，糖嘅即係發展咧，係用糖咧係對個食係好緊要嘅，亦都對個病好緊要啦，因為多人死嘅。
Yeah, yeah. Okay, next slide. You can see the same thing. Here, that's number of people death and the prevalence of UK. So this is showing you that it's not just early on. We're talking about the last few centuries, but now you're looking at what we have now. The number of diabetic patients continue to increase.
咁其實你睇到咧，唔淨止即係死人多咗啦，仲有患病嘅人咧，即係直食上啊，2000年一直咁嘣聲上去嘅。
So the next few slides, I'm just going to talk about the epidemiology of diabetes, worldwide data. So what is shown here was predicted in year 2000. So this is the number that we know at year 2000. And at that time is 2% of the world populations. And majority of those are what we call non-insulin dependent diabetes. So basically they are type 2 diabetes. So at that time when people are documenting this number, they thought that 30 years later, this will be the number. This will be the number in the whole world. And they also talk about the healthcare burden of this many number of diabetic patients because of heart disease, peripheral vascular disease, neuropathy, and most important is also kidney disease. So this will cause a lot of burden to the healthcare policy, the healthcare expenses. But this was the prediction 20 years ago. But in fact, by now, which is before 2030, we already overtake this number. And this is in the translation that Andrew have taken out, that at the moment around the world, the World Health Organization claimed that a year ago, we already reached 422 million patients with diabetes.
嗱，其實應該咧 ，OK， 其實咧你知道咧，我哋係2000年咧有個 prediction 咧，嗰陣時咧講話，有171個 million 嘅人咧係糖尿病者啦，咁世界上咧就2.1%啦，咁如果係2030年咧，就應該有366個 million 嘅人咧係糖尿患病者嘅，但係咧其實呢個數字咧已經好快脆咧，嘣一聲，2019咧已經快過20年即係2000年嗰個估計啊，因為現在嚟講2019咧已經喺WHO 咧講422個 million， 咁其實咧喺呢方面咧好多糖尿病嘅問題咧，好似例如心臟病啊，同埋你個所有血管嘅病啊，同埋亦都有你個腎病啊，好多嘢出嚟咧，都係會令到你係每一個好多不同嘅病嘅引發症出嚟嘅，咁所以其實咧喺個病嘅 expenses 咧嘅錢去使啦，同埋對病人嘅身體十分不健康，所以糖尿病真係有一個好大嘅對健康好大影響嘅。
And then it affect economy as well. That's why this picture is taken out from The Economist. It's the more well-respected magazines. And what they talk about is the same thing as what we talked before about the prevalence in adults of diabetes. So the data they saw, and this was published just last year, about United States is 13% of the population. And they predict that in China, it was 11%. And this percentage is continue to grow, and followed by India. So even though people think that diabetes is a Western society's disease or the developed country, but China, India, Japan, and all the Southeast Asian, the increase or the rate of increase is in fact much faster than the established economy like Europe or United States. So this creates a lot of implication in terms of health planning, in terms of economic costs, and that's why there are a lot of policymakers will turn into this particular area about diabetes as a healthcare threat and as an economic threat to a different country and to the society.
呢張 slide 咧係2019年開始一個即係forecast 一個forecast 啦。咁但係睇到咧已經美國咧係即係全世界即係可以講到個係最多嘅糖尿病病者啦。第二個係中國、印度啊，然後跟住日本啦。咁其實咧可能咧，其實中國都會快過美國嘅。咁同埋仲有一樣嘢咧，其實依家你睇到咧，美國已經係13% 人係糖尿病者啦，前期患病者係25%啊，咁其實好大，同埋仲有咧可以睇到咧個 trend 咧，就算係你係叫做 developing 國家啦，即係發展中嘅國家啦，可能更加快過嗰啲已經 develop 咗嘅國家嘅，所以變咗嚟講咧，糖尿病係呢個係一個好大嘅即係所謂健康嘅問題，亦都係喺所有嘅國家裏面計劃糖尿病嘅東西咧，都係會一個好大嘅問題嘅。
So this slide was actually made in year 2000. And at that time, you can see exactly what we say before this, year 2000. So these are the millions of cases of diabetes at that time. And you can see that in the Asian Pacific area, the number of patients is really huge. And at that time, we predict that the number of patients in 2030, but at the moment, based on our previous discussion, in fact, all this number, we already surpassed this in 2020 already. So it's going to be a huge issue in Southeast Asia and also in many developing countries.
呢個 slide 咧，其實咧係2000年做嘅，咁但係咧去到現在嚟講咧，我哋所有嘅 number 咧已經過晒佢㗎啦，咁所以變咗嚟講咧，真係會將來咧變咗一個係好大嘅即係健康嘅問題啦，同埋所有政府咧係計劃點去即係防禦呢個糖尿病啊。咁你睇下現在2000年咧就只係講話全個東南亞即係58個 million 要2003年咧，其實呢個 number 過晒㗎啦，中國亦都係，所以變咗嚟講咧，可以睇到咧，即係糖尿病真係一個好大嘅問題出緊現嘅。
Next slide. So the next slide shows that the cause of death due to diabetes is among the highest when you compare with cancer, cardiovascular disease, of stroke. And while prevention's various healthcare measures have a downward trend, that means improvement in the mortality rate in cardiovascular disease and stroke, but diabetes is continuing to increase.
咁其實咧，你都睇到呢個 slide 咧，其實呢個好好嘅 slide， 因為好多醫生會俾呢個 slide 俾你睇。其實糖尿病咧係咁多嘅重要病，癌症啦、心臟病啦或者中風咧係最高嘅。你睇到啊，嘣嘣聲上去嘅。咁第二樣嘢睇到咧，原來喺心臟病同埋中風咧係個死亡率咧繼續跌落嚟嘅 ，cancer 一跌落嚟，係糖尿病一個咧一路加上去。所以變咗嚟講咧，呢個係一個睇到一個特別好嘅 slide， 即係糖尿真係如果你唔控制到咧，死亡率係更加高嘅。咁呢個係一個好嘅 slide 嚟嘅。
Yeah, and among the problem with diabetes is that they will develop kidney disease or kidney failure. So those patients are either on dialysis or transplantations. And you can see the number of people that with kidney failure. Diabetes is the largest number in terms of the percentage of patient rate million per population per year. And this number continue to grow. So at the moment, this is 1997, but now all over the world, diabetes constitute almost half of the patient with kidney failure. And this is also true in Asia, in China, in Pacific Island area.
其實你睇到糖尿病咧，喺影響個腎，然後你要洗腎啊，咁佢哋個 ESRD 就係即係全部係講即係糖尿病影響個腎咧，一路係咁降高，一路亦都係咁升高喎。第一，第二咧，如果你係高血壓都冇好似糖尿病咁嘅技巧，令壞整個腎或者其他嘅腎炎啊，都冇令到咧你個腎壞得咁嘅。糖尿病係第一個咧係最高樣嘢嘅，所以就算你腎炎或者血壓高咧，都唔夠糖尿病，令到你嘅腎更加壞。
So the most important thing that we want to prevent patients getting into kidney failure or delay the onset of kidney failure is things we can control. And among diabetic patients or people who are going to get diabetes, you try to delay them as long as possible. And when they have diabetes, the most important thing is how you take care of the blood sugar. And this is one of the studies, and there are so many other studies showing that there will be less kidney damage when you have better blood sugar control. So they have undergo a prospective, that means you follow the patient over a period of year and One group, you try to make sure they can have their A1C as close to 6.5 as possible. The other group of patients, they're also giving medication. They are not as aggressive, so their A1C is about 7. So when you compare these two groups, there's a difference. And the difference is that for those that with better blood sugar control, their kidney damage are less. So it will take longer for them to need kidney dialysis or transplantation. While those with poorly controlled blood sugar, they will have more kidney damage and they will require dialysis much earlier. So this is a good example to tell people who have diabetes, that means they need to treat the blood sugar, control them so that there will be less kidney damage. For people who are pre-diabetic, you don't want them to get diabetic. At the same time, you also don't want them to get other organ damage, including the kidney damage, because high sugar can affect different organs very early. It takes a long time before you show the effect, but the damage is ongoing and is silent. And so controlling of blood sugar is an important prevention of organ damage.
呢張 slide 咧係好重要啊，因為咧其實咧教授咧就做咗好多 study 啦。如果你唔控制糖嗱一段時間5年後咧，你 follow up 咧睇到咧啲人咧，如果你 A1C 計係7.3%，which is 高啊，普通人係應該係去6.5以下嘅，但係咧就開始見到咧就好多人咧有好多已經係個腎會整壞咗佢，咁所以其實咧。血紅素個 A1C 咧 HbA1C 咧，你應該一定跌過 down 個即係低過6.5%，咁就繼續咧係 delay 咗維持咗你健康啲嘅血糖咧，就唔會一路繼續咧係去損壞你個腎臟同埋其他嘅身體上嘅冠狀啦，所以其實咧。一定每個人咧，你個 target 咧就唔係話我7% OK 啊，其實唔 OK 嘅，我一定係要落到去咧係低過6.5%，A1C 係低過6.5% 先 OK。咁所以咧，呢個就係幫助你最低限度咧係降低咗你損壞你嘅腎臟同埋其他你嘅身體嘅冠狀嘅損毀啦，係十分重要嘅。咁所以記住啊，你個新 target 唔係7.3就 OK 啊。係6.5以下 ，OK？
So this is a very important slide, so I want to spend a little bit more time. There are so many so-called normal range, and you may come across some that are slightly different. But I picked this one because I think this is more reliable and can tell us more. So ask yourself, which group do you belong? Healthy one, pre-diabetic, or the diabetic one? So hopefully most of us can be below 5.6. And you can look at some other table. They probably didn't give you this number. They think that you have to be reached 6 or so before you call yourself diabetes, pre-diabetic. But I think it's better to be more strict and disciplined and try to make sure that we are all below 5.6 if possible. And if you fall in this range, what should you do? That's also very important. So I just tell you, because I got some questions asking me about this particular A1C. So A1C basically is measuring hemoglobin. So it's 紅血素 hemoglobin. And it's glycated. That means it's have glucose, have a chemical reaction with them. So the higher the glucose over time, the higher will be this percentage. And that's the reason we use the A1C percentage as an index of your average blood sugar over a period of time, usually is 2 to 3 months or 1 to 2 months range. And it's the range from 24 hours. Okay, so in a way, it may not just reflect fasting blood sugar. This is fasting blood sugar. So this is when you just measure your blood sugar, this is the number. So in United States, people use milligram per DL. Hong Kong and UK and some European country, you use millimole per liter. So these are the equivalent. 7 means 126 or so. 100 is equivalent to 5.56. And you want to be below 100 for fasting sugar. And for the IU system is have to be below 4. And so this is fasting. But fasting might give you a false sense of security, because what's important is what you eat. And after you eat something, whether your body can control the sugar after the absorption of your food, which is the sugar level at 1 hour or 2 hours. And that's the reason that we have this test on the right-hand side called oral glucose tolerance test. So it's a test that requires you to first measure a fasting blood sugar first. So that means you are not supposed to eat anything in the past 8 to 12 hours. And then you will drink a glucose drink, a specific standard amount of 18 grams of glucose. And after you drink the glucose drink, we will measure your blood sugar at 1 hour and at 2 hours. Usually the maximum absorption are between 1 to 2 hours. And we want to see whether how quick it can go down as well. So the peak blood sugar level is an indication of whether your body can generate adequate insulin. And that amount of insulin is good enough to get rid of or to mobilize the blood sugar into the cell so that the glucose will be lowered. But not many people go through this particular test. So that's why that just fasting glucose may give you a false sense of security. And that's why that now a lot of people advocate measuring the A1C as a health check for most healthy individuals to see whether they belong to the pre-diabetic or already established diabetic. But when this is elevated, the ideal situation is for the individual to go through an oral glucose tolerance test. Or else, if you are conscientious enough to check your own blood sugar, then just measure your own blood sugar 1 hour or 2 hours after a meal. Then you'll know where you stand. So these are useful table for you to stick to your mind. Which box do I belong? We all want to belong to this box. Can we, if you are on this middle box, you try to maintain the sugar lower, and hopefully you become healthy again. If not, at least you won't go to the diabetic group. So this is something that all of us need to be aware of and strive to maintain our sugar in optimal range. So,
OK 嗱，呢張 slide 咧其實好重要嘅。其實呢個教授咧講呢張 slide 係十分清楚。第一，點解咁多人依家要度呢個叫所謂嘅 A1C 嗱？首先講咩叫 A1C 先啦。 A1C 咧，我哋每個人咧都有啲叫做紅血球，就係 hemoglobin， 即係糖化血紅素啦。咁咧就好多嘅糖咧就會 attach to 依嚿紅血球啦。咁我哋 measure 個 percent 嘅糖 attach to 佢啦，咁就知道咧我係有6.5% 啦，或者7% 啦，一路咁上去。咁其實你第一問下自己，應該想喺邊笪地方咧？我應該5.7至6.4啊，一係6.5咧。咁如果你係糖尿患病者咧，其實你都希望你自己跌翻去6.7以下，唔係6.4以下。去到最緊要咧就去到更加好嘅就去到5.7。咁但係呢個係一個好重要嘅。如果係前期患病者咧，你應該亦都希望你自己由6.4跌翻去5.6。OK， 如果唔係咧，你個即係傷害好大嘅。其實呢個嘢，因為長遠咧就係破壞你啲血管啊，同埋所有身體各位不同嘅organ 啊，咁變咗嚟講咧係會對身體唔好啦。咁好多時咧，我哋好多人咧都誤會咗，喂，我依家空腹糖好鬼正啊，其實都唔差。我依家度咧只係都係5至6啊，或者7啊嗰之間啫。咁其實咧好多係錯覺咗嘅。其實最重要咧就唔係做呢樣嘢嘅，因為 A1C 咧係當俾你24個小時嘅或者35個月裏邊嘅數字咧，度咗空腹血糖咧，其實只係嗰點嘅啫。仲有一樣重要點咧，就係你睇唔到你食咗嘢之後，你個有冇夠唔夠胰島素咧，幫助你去將啲糖咧係帶入去你嗰啲細胞裏邊。咁所以咧，其實咧真正要度咧，就亦都要有一個口服嘅葡萄糖俾你去測驗嘅，呢個叫 oral glucose tolerance test， 個 GTT test 啊 ，GTT test。咁呢個 GTT test 咧，你就係飲呢個糖水咧，係有18 gram 嘅糖水啦。咁係度飲完之後咧，你就會係1個鐘頭後會度一個糖啦，藥抽血啦。第二個鐘頭亦都第二個糖啦。咁就睇下你個糖咧係咪有即係嗰個糖喺個身體裏邊搞成點啦。如果你係夠胰島素嘅話，咁你當然啦，你個糖咧就會係跌到落去。如果香港嘅，你應該由唔會喺11嗰度啦，係7.2以下啦。如果你前期患病者咧，就應該喺8至11裏邊啦。如果你真係糖尿患病者咧，11嘅以上啊。咁所以變咗嚟講咧，好重要咧，你一定係要睇依個口服葡萄糖，就唔好俾你誤住，因為口服係好正啊，冇乜事啊。其實咧，依個先係認真睇到你自己 O 唔 OK。如果你睇到自己唔 OK 嘅話咧，你真係啊，希望你大家注意啊，要飲食方面啊 ，exercise 啊，食藥啊，幫助你降低過係喺即係喺A1C 低過6.4以下。咁最好啦，如果低過6.4以下，再一路落去咧，係到5.6啊更加好啦。咁但係如果你現在已經係6.5以上嘅咧，希望你係低翻落6.4以下。
So this slide gave us a concept about what happened. This is 24 hours, okay? 7 o'clock to 7 o'clock the next day. So these are the time when you have breakfast, your lunch, and maybe your dinner. And the red line is the blood sugar level. It's just one example. So your blood sugar fluctuates when you take your food, okay? So correspond with your blood sugar. When you have a high blood sugar, your insulin will also go up. And the reason the insulin go up is because they want to mobilize the sugar into the cell so that the glucose will come down. How much insulin is needed also depends on individual and whether they have resistance or not. If they have resistance, then the islet cell or the pancreas will have to work harder. So you will have a higher insulin to accomplish this, to get the blood sugar down. And you can see here, if you have starch-rich food, which means that you will have this effect because starch will break down into different type of sugar and then you get absorbed. But if you take sucrose-rich food, so sucrose is a combination of glucose and fructose. So the metabolism is more complicated. And its influence will be this insulin may be also totally different. So this is just an illustration to tell you what happened after your sugar load or after food. And this is how the insulin respond to the food. And insulin resistance means that you have to produce more insulin for the same effect. And the next few slides will give you a little bit more explanation, the mechanism why there's insulin resistance.
嗱，呢張 slide 都講得好特別嘅，因為咧你食早餐嘅時候咧，你都睇到啦，第一你個血糖咧就會升高去啦，咁亦都胰島素咧亦都繼續同血糖一齊咁升高，咁就幫助咧你將你個胰島素幫你啲糖咧入去你細胞裏邊啦。咁其實咧你食早餐晏晝咁同樣嘅係自由嘅，但係原來仲有一樣嘢咧好特別咧，如果你食咗好多係有starch 啊，即係嘅食物咧。咁亦都同你血糖咧係有同埋個胰島素有不同嘅反應。更加重要咧就係睇到，如果你個血糖再加你個叫做 glucose 啦，再加 fructose 果糖啦，加埋咧，咁啊就更加令到個胰島素咧係更加多啲嘅胰島素出嚟咧，就變咗幫助你攝入血糖嘅。咁你睇到咧，即係有 sugar rich sucrose 同埋即係 glucose 同 fructose， 即係糖加果糖嗰陣時咧，你係需要更加多嘅胰島素咧出嚟，係幫你嘅糖咧放入你嘅細胞裏邊。咁呢個同埋就以後幾個 slide 咧都講及咧乜嘢叫做胰島素嘅抗拒啊。咁佢會更加係了解多啲其實胰島素抗拒係點得嚟嘅咧
？Okay, the most simple explanation for insulin resistance is that this is sugar, glucose, and this is insulin. So under normal circumstances, when we have high blood sugar, we try to move the sugar into the cells. So the insulin are mobilized. So it needs other helper to have its function. So we use it as a insulin receptor just for simplicity, but it's a complex protein of different mediators. So in normal situation, when you have insulin with the proper receptor, the blood sugar will move into the cell. If for any reason that the individual have other antagonist with the receptor, like obesity will develop insulin resistance, production of specific hormone, stress hormone will affect this, then insulin effect will not be good. You probably need more insulin in order to take one little blood glucose into that. So this is almost as if the receptor lost its sensitivity. So the sensitivity is minimized. So there will be less blood sugar to go in. So for the blood sugar to go in, you need to generate more insulin. So this is the very simplistic view of insulin resistance.
咁其實咧可以解釋下咧乜嘢叫胰島素嘅抗拒咧？咁其實咧，我哋喺血管裏邊咧，當你有糖嘅即係有好多糖出嚟嘅時候，胰島素亦都會割落嚟咧，就幫啲糖有一個叫 receptor， 有個可以講一個帶入去呢個由胰島素帶啲糖入去呢個 cells 嗰度啦。咁呢個 receptor 咧，呢個可以講為呢個叫一個收糖嘅器皿啦，講啦嚇。咁變咗嚟講咧，係要有呢樣嘢攝入去嘅。咁但係有一個問題咧，好多時咧，當我係肥胖嘅人，一個肥胖嘅人，或者我好多壓力嘅，咁好多時咧，呢個 receptor 咧，即係呢個connector 咧就唔 work 啦，呢個接器就唔 work 啦。咁你要好多糖先有翻呢啲好多胰島素啊，唔係好多糖啊，好多胰島素先能夠令到你嗰個胰島素帶啲糖入去呢個細胞裏邊。咁所以變咗嚟講咧。 stress 第一一個壓力，第二 obesity， 同埋有好多即係不同嘅問題咧，係會令到你啲胰島素咧唔 work 嘅。咁唔 work 嘅時候咧，弊家伙啦，因為更加胰島素出嚟，要做好多胰島素出嚟，你先能夠幫啲糖入去個細胞裏邊。
Okay, so this slide explain a little bit more about insulin resistance. So when you have insulin resistance, sugar will be elevated. So when you have too much of blood sugar, you will need more insulin. So that means you exhaust the pancreas to produce more insulin. So that means you will have beta cell dysfunction. And glucose, when you are high, it will generate other toxic substance. And in addition to sugar toxic substance, it will also metabolism, higher lipid as well. And all this lipid toxicity, sugar toxicity will lead to beta cell dysfunction. And so they will become malfunction. So develop diabetes. So this is a simplistic vision of why beta cell insulin resistant eventually lead to diabetes.
另一個即係更加簡單亦都令到好多人容易知道咧，就咩嘢叫做胰島素抗拒啦。咁其實咧有兩樣嘢，第一，當你糖高嘅時候咧，佢會 damage 即係將嗰個胰島素啲 B cells 令到佢唔係 work 嘅。咁呢個第一啦。咁第二樣嘢咧，亦都因為咁嘅情況下咧，你個 cholesterol 咧同埋 lipid 咧好多時間亦都由嗰度出嚟嘅時候咧，咁亦都係會 damage 呢個 B cells。咁越多，譬如好似你嘅膽固醇亦都高啦，亦都糖亦都高啊，兩樣嘢一齊咧，亦都係會繼續咧係將你個胰島素嘅 B cells 咧係你嘅損毀。咁越整多嘅時候咧，咁你就更加多胰島素抗拒。咁你多胰島素出嚟咧，都做唔到嘢，入唔到，帶唔到啲糖入細胞裏邊。咁所以變咗咧，越整咧一路係咁壞落去嘅時候咧，你就會係令到你自己咧。高膽固醇同埋高血糖嘅時候咧，你啲糖入唔到個血管度，咁你繼續係會最後咧都轉變咗為你個糖尿患病者啦。
Okay, so this is a summary of the overall picture of insulin resistance. And insulin resistance can cause by obesity, by other things. And then because insulin resistance, so we have to produce more insulin in ourselves, so there will be high insulin level in the blood. And all this have a different effect to our muscle, to our nerve system. This is sympathetic nerve system, so affect our blood vessels, affect our heart, and also the most important one is affecting the kidney, and then eventually can lead to kidney failure. And all this also have high blood pressure. So when you have high blood pressure, there's a reason, either because of the blood vessel thickened, or because of the heart problem, or because of kidney cannot excrete the water. And all this are related to the diabetes disease. So this is an overall picture about the different organ involvement of high blood sugar. And it's a slow process of chemical reaction in different organs. And then the end result will be the organ failure of the kidney, of the heart, of the blood vessel, of the nervous system. Okay.
咁其實呢個咧就係一個好好嘅總結啦，唔淨止肥胖或者係本身係即係糖高啦，咁變咗好多嘢不同咧，就令到你胰島素係會抗拒嘅。當胰島素抗拒咧，個問題出現啦，因為咧你會高胰島素喺個血液裏邊係咁走嚟走去。咁如果係咁講嘅話咧，就令到你好多不同嘅問題咧就會出現啦。第一，你所有嗰啲即係裏邊身體嘅肌肉啊。同埋你血管啊、心臟啊，同埋腎衰竭啊，呢啲全部開始慢慢一路慢慢 一路咁開始即係發作出嚟嘅。咁你後患症就好大㗎啦。咁繼續咧之後咧，你有血壓高啦，唔淨止你即係嘅腎會開始壞啦，心臟開始壞啦，血管開始硬化啦，做咗好多嘢出嚟咧，令到你咧嗰啲血管咧有啲 plaque 喺晒度啦。咁亦都咧嘅糖尿病咧一路慢慢亦都發展嘅。咁所以呢個 chart 咧係一個俾到一個好嘅總結俾你咧，知道如果你係真係你啲糖係繼續高，你胰島素抗拒，咁最後咧就令到你成個身體都好多不同嘅冠狀咧係會損毀嘅。
Okay, so the next few slides, I just want to give you a little bit more explanation about not all sugar are equal. And sugar is made of so many different things. And in chemistry, we call it monosaccharide, disaccharide, and all those terms. But the most important thing is the difference between glucose and fructose. And fructose is very common because when you have sucrose, it's our table sugar, it actually contains fructose and glucose. And many of the soft drinks that we used contain fructose. And all the sweet, also they have high fructose corn syrup. And even honey and other fruits, they also contain fructose. So this is the background about fructose. And maybe we move on and then will you summarize this as a explanation?
OK， 嗱，其實咧糖咧唔係就係糖啊，其實糖裏邊有好多不同嘅糖嘅。嗱，果糖同埋葡萄糖咧，其實都有好唔同嘅。咁但係最重要咧就知道乜嘢叫做 fructose， 就係呢個叫做叫做高果糖玉米糖漿啦。咁呢個 fructose 咧就係其實裏邊咧就有呢個叫做果糖同埋加埋呢個玉米嘅糖漿兩個加埋晒咧。咁然後成埋咧就係一個 fructose， 即係 fructose 同埋 corn syrup 啦。咁其實咧呢個係一個好重要嘅東西嚟嘅。咁亦都有，如果你話係你食嘢啊果糖啊裏邊咧都有呢個 fructose 喺裏邊嘅。咁譬如喺尤其是你個 juice 啦，或者你個果汁啦，或者啲乾果啦，其實都有好多 fructose 嘅。但係最要知道咧就係 fructose 咧係對身體有一個咩害處咧？咁下幾個 slide 就會講俾你聽啦，就唔係就話糖就係全部一樣嘅，其實唔係嘅，裏邊有好多不同糖嘅。咁你要知道咧，原來糖係有不同啦，咁就係有不同嘅對身體有不同嘅好唔好嘅地方係話翻俾你聽。咁下一個 slide 就會講俾你聽啦。
So this slide tell you about the popular drink. We just picked this one, but all the sweet drinks, they all contain lot of sugar, especially fructose. And because fructose are more palatable, much present, so people become almost like addicted to it. And these are the number of sugar cubed correspond to one bottle or one can of the Coke. And this is the reason why there's a trend that we want to provide the education to the public, education to the kids to make sure they moderate their habit of drinking soft drink. And also there are some initiative in the public policy as how they need to change and hopefully can minimize this growth in diabetes.
呢張 slide 咧其實好特別，就講及咧，其實好多我哋嘅汽水咧都有 fructose 喺裏邊嘅。咁其實你睇一罐曲咧就已經有9粒糖喺裏邊啦。咁其實好多㗎。咁其實對身體係十分唔係咁好嘅。咁所以咧就用呢張 slide 或者教育俾大家咧，喂，真係唔好飲多汽水，因為呢個汽水咧全部係嗰啲講 fructose 咧係可以損壞你個身體嘅將來。而家飲得多啊，唔係飲一支啊冇乜所謂，但係繼續飲每日飲，同埋呢個越飲咧就越多，你會繼續想去飲嘅原因就係因為你有糖咧，有一個所謂叫習慣性嘅東西，令到你覺得好正喎，飲多啲㗎嚇。咁記住啦， 糖係好緊要啦，幾多糖？一支可樂 ，OK？
Okay, this is a more complicated slide, but I just want to give you the idea that fructose metabolism is slightly different from glucose. And it also have a lot more problem. So fructose can come from sucrose, can come from corn syrup, or even from fruits or honey. And then the metabolic pathway are slightly different. It takes a long time before they become glucose or glycogen. Glycogen is storage for the sugar, or triglyceride, which is the lipid. So you can see that fructose goes through a lot of metabolic pathway, use up a lot of energy, ATP is energy I mentioned earlier on. And then they can also lead to formation of uric acid. And uric acid is the end product of a chemical that causes gout. And a lot of diabetic patients can also have gout disease as well. And gout not only cause the joint gout, but they also affect problem in blood vessel, the kidney and liver.
嗱，呢個咧就講緊 fructose 啦，咁點喺個身體嗰度點轉變落去？其實咧都用咗好多不同嘅地方，亦都好多不同嘅 energy 啦，即係要有點樣去化翻出去啦。咁當落去最後咧就有3樣嘢，去咗 glucose 即係個葡萄糖啦，但係有一個叫 glycogen 就係將你糖 store 喺你個身體裏邊不同嘅地方啦，好似liver 啊或者係呢個肝啊咁亦都有啲係放咗去你嘅所有嘅呢個triglyceride 啊，同埋所謂叫做膽固醇裏邊嘅三支油膽固醇裏邊嘅。但係有一樣嘢好特別咧，佢亦都轉變咗咧，有一個 uric acid 一個尿酸啊。咁所以變咗嚟講咧，如果你係飲咗好多啲 fructose 咧，高機會咧俾咗你好多不同嘅喺個腎嘅損壞咧，亦都令到你自己咧會令到有一個呢個尿酸嘅痛咗啦，或者damage 你嘅損壞你嘅腎嘅。咁呢個要注重，其實尿酸係一個好常見喺 diabetic 上面嘅東西嚟嘅。
So next 2 slides just showing you the interrelationship of glucose and fructose. So glucose can also convert to fructose as well. If you're too high a glucose, then the glucose will be converted to fructose. And then fructose will have a direct effect, bad effect on the liver, formation of fats, and also they can also affect the cells of different areas, cells in the muscle, cell of pancreas, cell of the blood vessel, because glucose can also convert to other type of metabolite, a high level sugar that can cause damage or inflammation to the cell, which can involve beta cell, can involve the blood vessels, can involve the heart. So all those organ failure are related to glucose conversion to other metabolites that are not good for the body. But fructose, in addition to conversion to glucose, and here it can also directly affect liver, like fatty liver and formation of fat and other stuff.
咁其實呢個 slide 亦都好特別咧，睇到咧你個葡萄糖入咗個身體裏邊，就會機會第一轉咗佢做 fructose。嗱，如果 fructose 咧，你如果好多糖咧，第一講咗糖先啦，咁亦都會影響好多不同嘅地方，好似你所有不同嘅muscles 啊，或者你個 pancreas 好多即係不同嘅你嘅身體裏邊嘅冠狀咧，都會影響咗高，譬如好似心臟啦。咁你嘅心臟肌肉咧，可能塞住咗咧，就會令到心臟病發作啦。呢啲咁嘅情況咧，都係會全部喺個糖出現嘅。咁同埋但係有一樣咧，佢個糖亦都轉咗去 fructose 嘅時候咧，佢亦都影響你個肝臟，肝臟會影響你個儲存你嘅糖 glycogen， 亦都影響你嘅所有嗰啲脂肪嘅storage。 咁所以請睇咧，其實咧多糖咧係對你個身體係不健康，所以叫真係要好解點解要解釋要降低糖啦，係咁解啦。
So this slide focus specifically on fructose and how it affects this syndrome called metabolic syndrome, which include insulin resistance and all the bad things that happen, which include blood pressure, obesity, high lipids, fatty liver, and also inflammation. That means their immunity are not that good. They're more susceptible to infections and also other problems. And this is prerequisite. And if we didn't control well, then the patient will develop type 2 diabetes, which can even cause more end organ damage.
OK，呢個圖咧好緊要啊，講就係 fructose 咧，令到你咧好不同嘅冠狀咧係會影響啦。咁然後咧你亦都增加個胰島素抗拒啦，increase 咗你嘅血壓啦，你肥胖啦，同埋仲有咧就肝嘅脂肪啦，同埋仲有咧就你會令到你好多不同嘅地方係會最後咧令到你即係糖尿病第二嘅糖尿病嘅。Larry, I'm just going to go to the restroom, come back right back. Okay? You can explain.
Okay. So this is a slide explaining in more detail about the mechanism, why it affects the brain, it affects the heart and heart blood vessels, why it affects the kidney that lead to kidney failure, why they develop muscle damage so that they become what we call myopathy, why it affects the eye, like the diabetic patient or high blood sugar not well controlled, there will be higher incidence of cataract. And why all these patients with high blood sugar are more susceptible to develop fatty liver, or eventually fatty liver can lead to liver failure. And there are biochemical reasons, there are biochemical pathway why each organ is damaged by high blood sugar. The simple example is like why high blood sugar or diabetes patients are more susceptible or higher chances of getting cataract. Cataract is because there is a form of sugar that's formed from glucose that converted to sorbitol and other type of sugar. And that kind of sugar will cause the lens become blurred, and that's how you develop it. Why they develop thickening of blood vessel with high blood sugar? In addition to inflammation, oxidation, there's also formation of certain sugar compound like sorbitol and other stuff. And in addition to the high cholesterol that thicken the blood vessel. Regarding the kidney for high blood sugar, why the kidney more chances of getting kidney failure in diabetes? The earlier stage is the formation of new kind of sugar. The second stage is the effect on the energy consumption, the working of the kidney. That means the kidney have to work harder and less efficient. And in addition, you got a high blood pressure. All this causes damage to the kidney, so that the kidney failure will start very early. First with protein in the urine. And then because of more protein in the urine, the patient will have more edema and also high blood pressure. So all this added together will cause the damage to the kidney. And then eventually, patient will need either dialysis or transplantation. So there's all kind of pathway and mechanism why high blood sugar lead to all this damage. And for the brain as well, high blood sugar can cause higher chances of thickening of blood vessel, more arteriosclerosis. The high blood pressure can damage the function of the brain as well. And people have coined the term called type 3 diabetes. What is type 3 diabetes? Is patients have all kinds of the complications of diabetes, which means high blood sugar, high blood pressure, maybe heart problem, high cholesterol, and also may have early dementia or early Alzheimer. So they call this type 3 diabetes, specifically related to dementia or Alzheimer's disease. So this is just give you a bird's eye view of why high blood sugar is bad for the body. It's not just one organ, it's all the organs that are related.
哇！呢張 slide 咧，老實講就係好好啊，令到大家睇到咧，原來咧高糖咧係唔係令到一笪地方，係全身體都有問題。咁嗱，一路講落去咧，你第一講到眼啦，眼嗰度咧，其實咧就你會可能有白內障，因為啲糖加埋令到眼個 lens 就蒙咗啦，咁啊白內障啦。咁亦都有不同嘅肌肉咧發炎啦。咁同埋最可以令到你個腎唔係肝臟咧，亦都有即係個 fatty liver 啊，令到你好多地方用唔到啦，同埋即係令到你係有個問題喺度啦，喺個喺個肝臟嘅問題啦。咁血管裏邊咧有血管，即係啲血管咧心血管塞啦，因為你好多高糖嘅時候，好多人咧都會有膽固醇高啦，就塞咗啲血管咧，裏邊嗰啲血管咧，尤其是心臟嗰啲細嘅血管咧，令到塞咗好多脂肪喺晒度咧，咁你血去唔到咧，咁嗰個心就死啦，咁啊忽然間你又會有即係 heart attack 啦，咁同埋仲有咧，你個腎咧有個好大問題，尤其是你開始泵嗰啲叫做 protein 啊，即係嗰啲你喺個尿道好多protein 走出嚟，咁令到損壞腎，咁開始發炎。發完之後咧，你血壓會高，血壓高又 damage 個腎，整下你個腎咧就唔 work 就要點啊？洗腎啦，或者換腎啦。咁喺腸臟嗰度亦都有好多不同嘅地方，你個腸咧係開，因為佢全部你咁多糖喺裏邊啊，令到啲糖嘅一路喺度整到個腸咧唔係個 function 咁好啦。咁同埋仲有一個好重要，好多人唔知道咧，原來個腦啊〜如果你高糖咧，對腦係好大問題嘅。咁依家亦都講咗唔係type 2啦，大俾你依家第二型啦，依家個第三型。點解第三型咧？其實咧呢個係新嘅多人講嘅一個總結啦。如果你第三型就話你係第一你血糖高升嘅，第二你血壓高升嘅，第三你亦都有好多心臟病嘅問題啦。但係最大問題，你腦開始有問題啦，開始你唔記得嘢啦，因為啲糖咧塞晒喺腦度咧，入唔到個腦不同嘅細胞血管裏邊咧，咁你就令到個腦咧就開始唔係咁 function。但係最大問題咧，你開始有個 Alzheimer disease、dementia， 即係唔記得嘢啦 ，Alzheimer 啦，哇！呢啲係全部喺呢個叫做可謂總結咗呢個第三型嘅即係糖尿病啊。咁呢個其實咧。真係唔好唔記得呢樣嘢，因為咧我見到好多糖尿病喺 ICU 做嘅時候咧，即係做深切治療嘅時候咧，見到好多人嘅入到嚟咧，佢個係中風同埋呢個糖尿病塞咗喺腦嗰度咧，佢自己 Alzheimer 啦，唔記得嘢啦，同埋真係整下佢即係即係有即係又唔記得人啦，個損害真係好大。咁所以記住咧，呢啲咧就係總結翻嚟咧，如果你高糖咧。係真係全身嘅所有系統都要 affect， 都唔係話只係一個 organ， 記住唔係全身體啊，所以點解你一定要注重咧降低血糖啊？記住。
Okay, we'll go back to the same slide, and I told you that I thought this is a good slide so that we can focus on and ask ourselves, which block do we belong? We hope all of us can belong to this part, but even if you are pre-diabetic, we can still strive to prevent us from going into diabetes. And if possible, if we take care of ourselves, maybe we'll go back to become healthy again. And for people who are already on diabetic, I'm sure everyone is under good care, giving the appropriate medication. But self-care, lifestyle changes, they're all very important. And we want to aim ourselves to have better blood sugar control to prevent complication, because yes, when you are diabetes, you are giving the medication, but the kind of complication that you have depend on how well you take care of yourself. If you have better blood sugar control, chances are you will have less complication. And this is something that for those who have diabetes, you want to control your blood sugar. Of course, you don't want to overdo it, and you might not be able to get to A1C as low as 5.7 because you don't want you to develop low blood sugar as well, hypoglycemia. So moderation, but at the same time, be more conscientious and take good care, monitoring, and try every possible chance to prevent complication, to prevent, if you are pre-diabetic, to prevent from getting diabetes. If you are the healthy group, then try to avoid all the risk factors that lead you into pre-diabetic. There are avoidable risk factors and there are unavoidable risk factors. For unavoidable risk factor, we can't do anything, but there are many factors that are avoidable.
呢張 slide 教授咧，亦都再覺得係好重要俾大家知道啦。第一，如果你依家已經係糖尿患病者啊，咁你係希望你哋唔好話諗住你6.4都 OK 㗎啦，A1C 6.4% OK 啦，其實唔係，希望你咧就喺呢度咧係咁降低，跌到翻去咧係到5.6以下，咁能夠令到你係 healthy 嘅。咁但係咧，如果你已經係糖尿患病者咧，其實你個 target 咧就唔係7或者係8，其實你由呢度咧係要令到自己希望係跌翻6.4，因為如果你繼續6.5以上咧，你個身體係繼續損毀嘅。咁所以你可能要需要咧，你轉到你自己嘅生活習慣啊、食嘅嘢啊，全部將你個 A1C 繼續降低，去到6.4以下。嗱，當然啦，你亦都未必話好容易去到5.7嘅，因為好多時咧，你會變咗叫 hypoglycemia，即係佢低糖低得滯。咁但係咧，你一定係繼續由呢度咧跌到6.4以下啦。好似我哋其實香港有好多個糖友咧，有個糖友啱啱翻嚟咧已經話俾你 Ella， 佢本身係佢個糖咧已經係 A1C 係90嘅，但係佢依家3個半月之後咧，佢飲咗去糖茶跌到係5.8啊。咁佢就嚟亦都去到5.7㗎啦，咁佢會好努力嘅。佢就係第一飲去糖茶之中，亦都去做咩啊？做 exercise 啦 ，control 個 diet 啦，佢亦都佢個磅數係冇乜問題嘅。佢亦都日日好用功咧，去度佢自己嘅糖，知道自己點，佢用個 app lipid 度嘅，所以佢咧能夠令到佢自己咧去到5.8咧，即係由10去5.8，我覺得係一個真係 achievement 嚟嘅。
Okay, so this slide summarizes who is more likely to develop insulin resistance or pre-diabetic. I told you that there are avoidable factors, there are unavoidable factors. So you see that genetic lifestyle risk factors are more likely to develop insulin resistance. So risk factors include body weight, age. If you're over 45, you have higher chances. So family history, ethnicity, of course, we cannot avoid. But as long as we know that we belong to that group, then we have to be more careful. And whether you belong to that or not, we need to maintain good lifestyle, increase physical activity, because inactivity can lead to insulin resistance. Other health conditions like blood pressure or high cholesterol, then we need to be aware of that. And in female, there are a couple of things they need to be aware of. Like if they have high blood sugar during pregnancy, then they are more susceptible to develop type 2 diabetes or they are pre-diabetic. And in other polyendocrine disease in female, especially ovarian dysfunction or polycystic ovarian disease, they are more susceptible to develop type 2 diabetes. So all this are just the risk factor that you can look at that and then see if you belong to any of those groups. And even if you are not, you still need to be aware to maintain good lifestyle, habit, and diet.
呢張 slide 咧，亦都總結一下啦。點解有咩可能性令到你個現在個胰島素咧會有抗拒啦，同埋令到你會變咗前期糖尿患病者啦？第一就係好多時咧，可能係一個你自己嘅本身有 genetic， 即係你個遺傳方面啦，或者你生活習慣方面啦，會令到你嘅血嘅胰島素咧係抗拒啦，亦都轉咗你係糖尿前期患病者啦。咁仲有一個好重要咧，就係你體重啊！如果你係個 BMI over 30咧，機會咧係高嘅嚇，記住。咁同埋咧嘅數歲亦都高嘅。如果你係過45歲，你真係注意啦。咁仲有其他咧，就係如果你屋企嘅家人，好似你爸爸媽媽、你哥哥、細佬或者家姐係有咧個 chance 你有咧都係高嘅。咁仲有咧係好多喺即係黑人啊、美國黑人啊，或者係即係我哋嘅南亞裔人啦，同埋好多喺夏威夷嘅人啦，呢啲咧亦都係有個高嘅機會，因為佢係喺呢個遺傳上咧，呢班人咧係有呢種嘅可能性咧，令到佢會有變咗前期患病者或者胰島素抗拒嘅。咁仲有啦，就係好多人咧缺乏運動啊！嗱，呢個好重要嘅。原來咧真係運動咧係令到血糖更降低，亦都令到你個胰島素個抗拒咧唔會咁高，所以你個胰島素亦都會 become more sensitive 啊！咁好事嚟㗎，記住啊！就算你唔係去運動，你掃下地都 good 嘅嚇，記住啊！咁所以咧一定要喐，人就係俾你喐嘅，唔係企喺度啊！咁仲有一樣嘢咧，唔好唔記得咧，有高嘅血壓啦，同埋你有高嘅膽固醇咧，亦都會令到你咧高chance 咧係攞到呢個胰島素同埋你嘅糖尿病或者前期患病者嘅。咁仲有一個好重要咧，好多人都唔記得咗啊！如果你生 BB 前，或者你係有心臟病，或者你有即係中風嘅，同埋你有睡眠窒息症嘅，呢啲咧同埋仲有一個即係你嘅糖尿病嘅問題咧，呢啲係全部咧會即係令到你都會有糖尿病嘅發生嘅，呢個係要小心。尤其是好多時咧唔記得咗咧，係嗰個你個卵巢係有問題嘅咧，同埋你係生 BB 仔前後咧。你呢個咧都係會繼續咧令到有高風險咧，係令到你有糖尿病嘅將來可能發生。所以咧呢啲咧，如果你有睡眠窒息症啦、心臟病、中風啦，同埋你分娩後前後咧，要十分注意你嘅糖嘅發展啦。OK， 咁呢個咧係一個好嘅總結 slide 咧，係點能夠 prevent 你自己係睇住唔會變咗由你現有嘅情況變咗係前期患病。同埋呢個胰島素嘅抗拒。
So this slide shows the natural history. So focus on the number of years it takes from insulin resistance to develop type 2 diabetes. So from insulin resistance, it takes a few years to develop type 2 diabetes. And then structural changes. Remember, blood pressure can start very early. Structural changes which you can't see yourself started very early. And you can notice, and if your doctor can measure for you in the lab, is that you might see microalbuminuria, so albumin in the urine or protein in the urine. But protein in the urine take about almost 10 years before you developed it. But when you started to have proteinuria, that means the damage is already significant. There's already damage very early on, which you don't see it, but it's there. And of course, cardiovascular risk is always because most of those individuals are at a higher age group. But then it take about 10 years or 20 years when you started diabetes to get end-stage kidney disease where you need dialysis. But this duration depends on how well you control your blood sugar. If you don't control your blood sugar well, and if you have other problems like high blood pressure and other issues, your kidney failure may start very early, like 5 years or 10 years after you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So when you have insulin resistance, make sure you delay this period as long as possible. So don't get yourself into the box of type 2 diabetes, okay? So this is pre-diabetes. So hopefully all of you are healthy in this area and try to prevent from end organ damage with heart disease or kidney disease or liver disease.
嗱，呢張 slide 咧俾到個時間性俾你睇到咧。如果你本身係前期患病者，點唔會令到你好即係轉咗去你糖尿病啦？第一，你要了解呢度由1至有30秒長嘅，但係其實咧，首先咧第一樣嘢你睇到咧，如果你個胰島素繼續抗拒一路上去嘅時候咧，如果你係控制你唔到呢樣嘢，亦都血糖繼續高咧，好快脆咧就跌咗1、2年、3、4年咧。就跌咗你係變咗一個第二期嘅第二型嘅糖尿病患病者，仲有咧好多嘢喺個身體上咧不同嘅地方係轉緊變嘅，因為你係一過咗你血糖高過6.5以上咧，你個 A1C 咧，其實你身體繼續係去將你啲organ 啊身體嘅不同嘅冠狀咧係破壞緊嘅。咁同埋仲有咧，你就會一路係咁轉咩咧？每年因為慢慢嚟噶嘛，亦都你嗰陣時係冇乜轉藥啊，亦都唔會覺得好似有病啊。咁同埋咧，你血壓又開始高啦。咁你血壓高嘅時候咧，你會開始亦都喺嗰個尿道方面咧睇到一啲微白嘅蛋白質咧就走落去，蛋白咧跌落去嗰個尿道裏邊。咁呢度咧就可能大約幾年嘅。但係如果你仲有蛋白喺個尿度咧，就 proteinuria 咧。蛋白尿道上幾年咧，你一出嚟咧就會可能損壞到你個腎啊。當你損壞腎嘅時候咧，可能5、6至10年咧，你就會係要洗腎噶咯。咁呢樣嘢係一個好大嘅問題啦。你講都唔想洗腎噶啦，係咪？因為我做咗腎科咧，由40年前開始做腎科啦，見到我同好多病人洗腎咧，真係好辛苦，每日3次嚟醫院，一個禮拜3次嚟醫院。雖然我哋有 CAPD， 但係都係唔正仔，又去 travel 又唔掂，身體好多問題出現，所以變咗咧，千祈唔好跌落去自己去到要洗腎。OK， 咁仲有一樣嘢啦，仲有一個咧就係你個心臟病咧。如果你啲血管係塞晒咧，其實咧因為糖高咧就會塞你血管啦，咁令到你一直都係喺心臟病好快咧會死亡。所以呢啲嘢咧，呢個 slide 係好重要，知道嗱。我話俾你聽，各位，如果你係繼續令啲糖越高嘅時候，你不同嘅地方咧一路咁落去咧，就係好多不同嘅後患症，係跟年咁有好多年去做嘅。咁但係你講到嗰陣時，我都冇症狀啊，冇乜所謂，繼續狂食啊，或者繼續冇問題增加血糖咧，其實最後咧就幾年後咧就害咗你嘅。記住呢樣嘢，咁希望呢個咧你睇到。其實真係要繼續去努力咧，係降低血糖。
So this slide summarizes the importance of prevention. Prevention is better than cure. And just to make it simple, you got A, B, C, D, E. You see, A I represent for A1C, B for blood pressure, C for cholesterol, D for diet and others supplements and exercise. So all this just to remind yourself, you don't want to get into the problem like what you showed in the last slide. So early start is very important.
嗱，其實咧好重要咧，真係要大家了解咧，好重要咧就係防禦啊，唔係等你病先醫啊。呢個係千祈唔好使你病醫西。Early 最早防禦係最好嘅辦法。咁第一咧。要睇住你嘅 A1C 啦，即係你個 A1C 如果係低過6.4就梗係好啦，係咪？呢個係 你嘅新嘅 target 啦，就算你係依家糖尿患病者，你都希望你係將你嘅血A1C 跌到 under 6.4，OK？ 咁同埋咧就你嘅血壓啦，你血壓都要降低佢啦，做你個膽固醇亦都降低佢啦，即係呢3樣嘅高都希望你當咧 normal level 啦。咁就咧最重要咧，你食嘅東西啦，同埋你即係你不同嘅呢個保健嘅補充品啊，好似去糖茶啲東西咧，仲有 exercise 運動係十分重要嘅，幫助你總體嘅糖咧降低。咁所以咧呢個咧係預防咧係好重要一個重要嘅治療啊。
So this is an old saying from Chinese father of medicine in Chinese herb medicine, 黃帝內經. So you want to be a superior doctor, you want to prevent the disease rather than just treat the disease and treat the complication. So we want to avoid complication, treat the disease before it's clear, and prevent if possible.
嗱，其實咧呢個係中國嘅醫生可以我呢個醫生嘅皇帝啦，叫皇帝嘅名啊。咁佢講嘅，佢話上醫咧醫未病咧就係即係如果你未有病咧，去醫治咗佢咧，咪更加好啦。如果係普通醫生咧，就有病先醫病啦。最差嘅醫生咧，就係最好大病你先去醫佢，咁就變咗真係麻麻地啦。所以記住，其實我哋最重要咧。就係未病之前咧，要防禦佢 ，OK？
So this is the summary. So diabetes is a new epidemic and is growing. We got more than 400 million patients now, and we don't want this to go even higher. Blood sugar can be checked, and high blood sugar can lead to multiple organ damage. It's not just diabetes, it's all the organs in your body, heart, kidney, liver, eye, nervous system. And good blood sugar is important in delaying the onset of diabetes because there are so many of us are pre-diabetic, but we need to prevent from becoming diabetes. And for pre-diabetic, that's even more important, delay the onset of real diabetes. And this is based on prevention.
嗱，咁好多教授咧，就今日講咗真係咁多好嘢俾我哋聽啦。咁我哋就係做個總結啊。第一，咁我哋總結咧就係第一，如果你糖尿病嘅時候已經係一個可能係世界嘅問題㗎啦。咁好重要咧就係第一。你要個高血糖就一定令到你係好多不同嘅地方咧，係會喺個身體損壞，係心啦、眼啦、腦啦、個腎啦、所有全身體嘅血管啦，係會硬化啦，咁令到係不同肝啦，哇！即係全身體嘅所有每個肝臟咧都會影響到嘅，所以控制個血糖咧係好緊要。其實最重要咧，你就如果你已經係前期患病者，或者你係好人一個，千祈唔好轉咗好快脆咧，就去咗呢個前期患病。其實好多人都唔知㗎，因為我見到香港好多人都因為我而家前期患病者㗎啦。咁所以變咗嚟講，令到你一定要唔好咁多，即係令到你前期患病就會轉咗佢係糖尿患病者。因為呢個最之外咧，咁你就真係去到一轉咗糖尿患病咧。你有好多不同嘅問題咧，出現喺度咧，係令到身體十分壞不得，亦都唔健康。所以呢個咧係一個好大嘅問題咧，都希望咧大家係注重啦，同埋大家係希望你個前期患病一路係 delay 到好多年後都唔轉去呢個真係嘅糖尿患病者，或者你已經係糖尿患病者，希望你走翻去前期患病者嘅血糖。個 percentage 係6.5以下，即係6.4以下啦，個 A1C， 咁你令到咧就繼續身體健康，唔會有好多不同嘅併發症糖尿患病者併發症出現。咁希望各位繼續努力。嗱，咁我哋依家咧就係去問答時間啦。其實咧right now is a question and answer。 some people already actually sent me some question. There's quite a bit of question, but one of the questions that I would like to ask, one of these slides, actually, people asked there's some new drug. It's called SGLT2. So how does new drugs work? 好多人問咧，因為依家好多時咧，現在有啲新嘅drug 出現啦，咁有啲人就聽過呢樣嘢嘅，咁有好多人就只係食metformin，但係依家好多醫生咧就開始話有一隻新藥metformin再加著咧會更加好，咁就唔使打胰島素啊咁樣，咁所以咧我就問翻醫生，呢個係 SGLT2 係點用 ？So a lot of people ask, if I take the metformin and I don't take insulin, is this drug will be good?
This is a very new drug, and the mechanism of actions is through the kidney. Okay, in the kidney, we have many of this unit. We call it either kidney unit or we call it glomerulars. So we call it kidney units, make it simple. So we got 1 million of them in 2 kidney, okay? And how it works, we got blood flow here, and then with the pressure, it will act like a filter. So you filter some of the blood cell here and going back to the vein. But this is surrounded with different capillaries. So glucose, all the substance that are filtrate, glucose, sodium, potassium, all the iron pass through this tube. And then eventually to our bladder, and it become like urine. And we got a lot of hormone along this area. And we survive as a species is because we developed this sophisticated system in reabsorbing the important filtrate before it becomes urine. So what are the things we reabsorb? We absorb all the salts, sodium, potassium, magnesium, all the other. Some are absorbed more than others to maintain our body. The term called homeostasis, that means consistency, so that our blood will have the same blood chemistry, same blood level. An important substance for sugar is important as long as it's the right amount, okay? So we need to reabsorb sugar. We need to reabsorb sodium. And how is that accomplished? Is by the hormone called sodium glucose link transporter. Sodium glucose, which is sugar, link transporter. So it's a protein that extract the glucose and also extract the sodium. And 2 of them will move from the urinary space into the blood and then reabsorbed. So for healthy individual, for normal individual, we try to save the sodium, we try to save the glucose. And by the time we become urine, there shouldn't be any glucose. There may be still a trace of sodium, but if you have a healthy kidney, the sodium will be low here. So we reabsorb almost 99% of the sodium. That's how we maintain our species. And this is based on evolution. We started from the sea, eventually to the river, and then into the land. So during this process, we need this evolvement of the hormone to absorb. So all this hormone or transporter, we notice it. And for a number of years, and we did experiment in the 10 or 20 years ago, and we thought it might be interesting if we can develop something to block this, to block some extent, not block all, so that some glucose will go back to the body and sodium will go back to the body. But if we let go some of the glucose, maybe there will be less sugar in the body. And this is how people develop a blocker, inhibitor of this particular one. 2 is one of the specific transporter that are more efficient. And it become a drug. It's taken orally, either once a day or sometimes twice a day. And it's been approved for treatment of type 2 diabetes. It's not approved at the moment for treatment of pre-diabetic. So at the moment, I think in Asia, it's branded by different company. It's called Sardines, but this is the chemical term, SGLT2 inhibitor. And in China, it's also available. In America, it's also sold by different company with different term or different brand name. So how it works is that you take it so that you will have more urine output, more sodium in the urine, and then glucose as well. So it serves 2 purposes. You lower the blood pressure because of lower sodium, and at the same time, you also get rid of some glucose from the body. And I was curious that one of the herbs related tea that Andrew is talking about might have properties similar to this particular drug. So it might lower the sugar, at the same time it acts like a diuretic, so you get rid of the sodium and increase the volume removal. And there are a number of clinical studies to see if the drug can be used for pre-diabetic, but at the moment we don't have the final result yet.
Okay, excellent. 嗱，首先咧我話講啦，咁因為有啲人問咧咩叫 SGLT 啦，咁就喺香港都有啲人用，即係問可唔可以用咧？因為如果用咗之後，佢用metformin方面加埋一齊，咪更加好啊，能夠令到降低血糖 rather than打完手術啦。咁教授講咗咧，其實咧你血走落去個腎嗰度咧，就會做一個好嘅 filter 啦。咁 filter 咗之後咧，就去即係過濾咗之後咧，咁嗰啲糖咧就會吸晒入去，或者係如果你個係冇問題嘅人咧，嗰啲糖同埋嘅鹽咧都會吸晒入翻去嗰啲嗰個血管由嗰個血管裏邊嘅。咁但係其實咧，佢哋都睇到咧，如果我哋將啲糖同埋嗰啲鹽係放翻出嚟，咁我咪變咗能夠令到我啲糖少咗喺個血管裏邊，同埋亦都令到我啲鹽少咗，咁我亦都係控制到兩樣嘢，一個糖降低啦，另外一個就我能夠血壓亦都降低啦，咪更加好。咁其實咧就製造咗呢個藥出嚟咧，咁其實現在即係喺香港世界上咧賣不同唔同名嘅，但係都有呢個字咧 SGLT2， 即係鹽啦、sodium 啦、glucose 咧就係 G 啦、L 啦就係呢個line up 呢個 transportation 啦，咁就會係係幫即係多數係用呢個名稱嚟做嘅，咁其實係真係會係幫助一個新藥，係會令到你係糖會降低喺尿道走出嚟，同埋咧係令到你個可能血壓低啦。咁亦都講咗咧有啲即係苦瓜啲咁類嘅嘢咧，亦都有同樣嘅功效啦。咁令到你個鹽或者糖咧都係可以由呢樣嘢咧喺個尿道個出現嘅，咁就有助咧降低你血糖同埋個血壓低嘅。OK， 咁啦 ，Thank you again, Professor Chan. Thank you.